There was a time when we all watched the same stories, when we all gathered around the same screens, quoted the same movies, argued about the same characters, and sang all the same songs. There was something tribal, something anchoring about it. A great film didn't just entertain you, it connected you. It told you who you were, who we were. It didn't matter where you live, New York, London, Cape Town, Sydney. If you said, "I'll be back," or hummed the Jurassic Park theme, someone would smile. That was culture. And more importantly, it was shared. But somewhere along the way, the mirror shattered. Media decentralized. No more TV networks, no more must-see cinema, no more radio charts that everyone knew. Now, it's YouTube rabbit holes, TikTok algorithms, niche newsletters, personalized content, podcasts as obscure as the most obscure things you can possibly imagine. It is content you love, but often no one else has ever heard of. And you feel it, don't you? That strange, quiet distance between people. That sense that we don't live in the same worlds anymore. Because in many ways, we don't. This episode is about the decentralization of media, but also something deeper. The fragmentation of society. The collapse of cultural unity. The reason why decentralization became necessary, but also the cost we may not have fully counted or fully realized. The promise was freedom, but at the loss of the center, do we lose the culture too? Join me for this snapshot episode of Map to the Future. Now, if you're like me and you're over a certain age, you will remember the big connective media events of the past. You'll remember the first time you saw Jurassic Park and were blown away by what that movie was, by what that movie was like, and how it was such an anchoring cultural moment. There was nobody my age who hadn't seen it. There was nobody who hadn't heard about it. And then there were 1,000 toys. Every child had the T-Rex or the car or the lunchbox, or all of them. And it was, as I said in the intro here, it was culturally connective. The media used to centralize us, blockbusters, the nightly news. You used to be able to watch the nightly news. You used to be able to watch the news at 10 or the news night program that started a bit earlier that held an element of trust enough in it that you could sit and watch it and listen to it and actually feel like you were informed and that you were listening to the same thing as everyone else. The top 40 charts that everyone cared about. They were shared moments in the history of our civilization. But there's been a shift over the last decade or so, maybe a bit longer, maybe more, maybe close to about 15 years, probably started in earnest around about the 2010 time, I would say. The creator economy, the Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Rumble, the creators who began to gain autonomy. And that was interesting because there was a reason why that happened. And the reason it happened was because others were trying to centralize us. So I feel that it is as a result of the attempted forcible centralization of major unelected bureaucracies, the EU, the UN, the WEF, name them. They were on a mission to try to forcibly centralize our people, our culture, our economy, our thinking. Everything was being forcibly centralized. It's still, they're still trying to do that. In many places, that is still the agenda. That is still what they're trying to do. Create centralization. But what happened, therefore, is the products of our culture that used to centralize us, they began to feel artificial. They began to get corrupted by agenda-driving propaganda. They stopped being about our culture, and they started being about the culture that they were trying to impose on you. So naturally, people turned to decentralization. Money, the rise of Bitcoin and the rise of tokens of cryptocurrencies and so on. Then power. So there's things like decentralized power grids are now right on the agenda. As I touched on, the decentralization of media. Podcasts have now become far more popular than any news program you care to mention. Now you get most of your media through streaming services, and the streaming services have algorithms in them that are designed to pick up your viewing habits and show you the things that you're more likely to watch. And so therefore there's lots of things that would come out that you'll just never see. They'll never come up in your feed, if you like, because it is not something that you're ever going to watch, because that's just not how you're built. And there's a bit of a danger here. Decentralization was reactionary. It wasn't necessarily, and I don't think it necessarily will end up being the replacement for these things. But getting back to that centralization is no easy thing. The consequence has been cultural fragmentation. As we have moved from centralization to decentralization, we have created a fragmentation of culture. Because now you can be having a conversation with somebody you know in your local area, and they don't watch any of the same programs you watch. They don't listen to the same news that you listen to. They don't follow the same podcasts that you follow. They don't pay attention to the same influencers and so on. And everybody's got their own influencer and their own book and their own podcast and their own things that they're thinking about and that they're paying attention to. And there's something problematic in that in a lot of ways. Now, in no way am I advocating here that we need to scrap it all and go back to the centralization, because the centralization got corrupted. The three channels that used to be on TV when I grew up, any teenager you talk to these days and ask them if they can understand the concept of there only being three channels on TV and they went offline at midnight, would blow their minds. And yes, although I understand the principle in the necessity to allow people to follow their own individual things and their own individual passions and focus on things that ignite them, that's necessary. And as a very creative person who has generally been quite countercultural and has always been someone who is a bit contrarian in my general approach and my general attitude to things, as somebody like that, I think I identify with that need more than the average person. Yet, there is a question here, isn't there? Which is it a good thing, ultimately? if we get this major fragmentation and we get this mass decentralization, what does happen to culture, to the world? Do we make it more vulnerable to attack? Or do we strengthen the individual to such a degree that they are uncorruptible? Hard to say. I don't think it can be argued that we need cultural centralization. We need cultural unity. We need a shared set of values. We need a shared set of things that we hold dear and believe in. That is necessary for a cohesive and efficient and well-functioning society. You need it. But the more we personalize down, especially with AI, which massively accelerates that process. If I use my AI now, it will give me completely different answers to if you use your AI. And you can ask it broadly the same questions. And I can ask it broadly the same questions, and it will give us different answers because it's personalizing the content to us. The same thing happens with the ability for almost anybody now to create their own podcast, and I don't miss the irony in that. The real question I have here, and I'm not even trying to attempt to necessarily answer it, it's more about posing the question. It is, do we actually feel that this decentralization of media, which is where it began, I believe the cultural shift away from that push towards centralization began in media, and began on social media, where they began to form echo chambers of everyone that agreed with them and force out those that didn't. That's where it began. It's expanded and rapidly grown, and it is now money. It is now energy. It is now media. It is now entertainment. It is now what restaurants you eat at, what food you eat. Even diet has become personalized. You can find 1,000 podcasts and a dozen different companies very quickly that will give you the ability to do tests on yourself, to give you a personalized meal plan, a personalized diet just for you. Again, there are pros and cons, there are good and bad in it, but it is concerning when you look at it in the macro. So I want to ask an overarching question here, and that is this. AI coming into this equation is now beginning to flood us with infinite content. Nowadays, there's AI so advanced that I can create a YouTube channel without me being in it. I could create an avatar, a very realistic human-looking avatar, and have it talk about a particular subject and make a podcast. And it could be hyper-personalized down to a specific niche of people. And that's only going to be exacerbated by continual algorithm updates and AI being able to integrate more and more into your life and understand what you do, what you care about, what turns you on, what turns you off, what are the things that you care about, what are the things you're drawn to, what are the things you're pushed away from, and so on. And so is it going to actually unite us to have AI and the rest of the decentralization agenda continuing to go? Or is it just going to atomize us further? Is it going to exacerbate the cultural fragmentation that is already taking place? Loneliness is a huge problem these days because now the decentralization means that you go on your dating app. You don't go out to the same bar and the same club that all your friends go to. You sit at home and swipe. That's how you meet someone. And again, I don't miss the irony. I met my wife on a dating app. Wasn't swiping, but it was a dating app. There are good and bad in these things. There are advantages and disadvantages in all of it. There are shades of grey. This is not a black and white situation. But we have to look at it in the aggregate. We have to think about this from the higher viewpoint to analyze what that future may look like. Where is it going as a general rule? And as a general rule, it is going in a bad direction. Maybe we need to consider developing a new kind of cultural center, a new kind of way to connect everybody, because we need some sort of voluntary shared ritual. We need something that engages everybody in the process. We need myth building among value-aligned communities of people. Myths have been the uniting principle of civilization forever. Some of the myths that we know today have been traced back 7,000 plus years with evidence suggesting that many of those were at that point perhaps thousands of years old themselves, passed down through nothing but storytelling around the campfire. These are important, hugely important anchoring principles in our culture. They are necessary. They are needed. They are not disposable things. They are not something we can just cast away and say, oh, we can get on without that. Not going to happen. We need it. It is required. It is the future of culture isn't going back to the center. It's about finding new ways to dream together. Because that's what actually takes us forward. That's what brings people together and what gets everybody united. The tribalism within politics these days shows you very clearly that there is a desperate need among people to feel as though they belong to something, because the erosion of religion, the erosion of that central cultural norm, the erosion of family and family units, all of these things, these decentralization. Ultimately, what you get with decentralization is every single individual person sat at home in front of a screen being fed their own personal viewpoint of the world. That's where you get. That's the ultimate outcome of decentralization. There is nowhere further to go at that point. And at that point, what do you have? You don't have a society, you don't have a culture, countries don't matter, nations don't matter, religion doesn't matter, none of it matters when you get there. Because there is no unity. There is nothing holding the glue of society together. And so, I want to ask you a question that I want you to take away and consider off the back of this snapshot episode. How far does decentralization go before it goes too far? I'm not certain I can answer that here and now. But one thing I would say is that there is probably a need to move ourselves back toward a more homogenized culture. And in order to do that, you need those uniting stories, those cultural anchors that bring people together. And so you need an element of re-centralization, but it needs to be free of the corruption and the agenda that has become so pervasive in the last few decades. And until we can manage that, the slide towards ultimate atomization will continue. Thank you for watching this episode of Map to the Future. If you'd like to know more or you'd like to get in touch with us, please email us on the link below, connect with us through our social media, ask us questions. We're always happy to speak. And if you'd be interested in joining us as a guest, please send me an email. I'll be more than happy to reach out and arrange a chat. Thank you. And until next time, keep looking to the future.
Would you like to map your future? Would you like to plot out the way you want your life to go? Would you like to find a way to take yourself from where you are to where you really want to be? If so, now you can. Come book an appointment with me. Use the link at the end of this video or down in the description. And you can book a one-to-one session with me, and together we can start mapping your future. I am an investor, a mentor, a entrepreneur, a business coach, a mindset coach. I have personally taken myself through several transformations in my lifetime and remapped and refocused myself in a new direction several times over. Now I dedicate myself to viewing that future, to mapping the future that the world could have. And I want to help you map your personal one. So come book with me today and let us start mapping your future.